And many people who have survived cancer actually say cancer was one of the greatest blessings of my life because it forced me to wake up and assess and reassess the things that were priorities and such.
I would say
But
that
most people that hear what you just said are going to think you're crazy, but there are those that experience that and they came out on the other side with a whole new level of understanding.
You are listening to The Dr. Haley Show, the podcast dedicated to helping you optimize your health. Each episode, there will be an interview or a message to help you discover better health. We will be featuring health radicals on the show to bring new ideas to the table, as well as doubling down on key fundamentals to support you living your best life. Your host is no other than the founder of Haley Nutrition, Dr. Michael Haley.
I'm Dr. Michael Haley. This is the Dr. Haley Show podcast. Today's guests, John Ortiz, master healer in pranic healing, that's an energy healing, and Jonathan Atleson, he's a master musician and ghostwriter. In today's podcast, we're going to be discussing the 3 paths that people can take when fighting any condition from minor flu to cancer. There's really 3 paths you can take, and hopefully at the end of this podcast, you'll have a good understanding of the differences in those paths, and you might know better the path you might want to take, whether you're fighting the sniffles or something more serious. Enjoy the show. What's new and exciting?
Oh, wow. We got a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Percolating.
Yeah.
And it's not coffee.
No, it's it's last night we went to a spiritual healing event, and it was the pearl that I pulled out was this aspect of programming water or charging water with an intention. And so if you look at in a Catholic church, they have holy water. And what holy water is, it's the local municipal water in the back of the church that a priest says a prayer over. And then for those who believe it to be holy, it probably becomes holy. For those that believe that it's just the municipal water, becomes municipal
Yeah,
water.
but in San Francisco, it comes from the Hetch Hetchy Reserve, so it's like pure and pristine, supposedly. Except
Well,
that
it's like the Eucharist, Some people believe it's Jesus and some people say it's symbolic.
Yeah. So part of the thing is that you could take your water and put an intention on it, and you could do the same with your aloe to maximize its potential healing aspects. Like,
Yeah, sure.
why are you drinking the aloe? I said, what's your goal? What's your aspiration? And so when we look at ourselves, we're basically programmed water. The molecule of life is water. And so if you're programming, one thing I learned from Jonathan was that if you kind of see your body and mind as a symphony orchestra, and this would be like a particular instrument getting out of tune or a section getting out of tune, how do you bring that back into alignment and back into tune? And so part of that is, well, what's the new intention of what's coming in? The air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, your thoughts you think. And so part of my thing is that if most people drink water with no intention, it's considered high intention if you say, I'm going to drink this much water every day. But if you just add a particular intention, like we bless our food before we eat it, you bless your water or you bless your aloe before you drink it.
That's interesting because, and I'm going to make sense of it and show proof. I'm going to give proof why it would make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And a more easy to understand thing, if you were eating with intention.
Is it?
And you put the food in your mouth and you're chewing it with the intention of digesting it properly, and you're eating with an awareness instead of, I got 3 minutes to get my lunch in and just shoving it down.
Mm-hmm.
The intention's differently, it's different, and you're going to actually eat it differently. You're going to receive it differently, and you're going to prepare it with the way you consume it. It does make sense. It's also one of the reasons why I like people to know the science of the aloe. Because just by having some understanding of what it can do scientifically, as they're consuming it, knowing that, whether it's increasing the benefit because it increases their faith, however that works, I do believe that it's important. Or is just knowing the information going to help them be more scheduled and more attentive to their schedule of having it as they should.
Mhm.
There's a lot of super great science when it comes to the why on aloe vera. One thing I will never say, and I'll say that it doesn't do this, I'll never say aloe vera cures cancer. Aloe does not cure cancer. Doctors don't cure cancer. Drugs don't cure cancer. Chemotherapy doesn't kill cancer. Radiation, well, it can kill cancer cells, but it doesn't kill cancer. It doesn't get rid of it. It doesn't cure cancer. There is no cure for cancer except a person has the ability to cure their own cancer. We all have immune systems, and our immune system is either winning or losing the battle. We all have cancer cells. We're either identifying them and getting rid of them, or they're growing faster than our ability to take out the garbage. But there is scientific reasons why aloe vera would help someone fight cancer and help their immune system do better against it. And that I could talk about and not get in trouble for. Have you ever seen Rodney's testimonial video where he's got person after person saying, you know, I wouldn't be alive if I didn't drink this aloe vera? Did you see that video?
Immediately sounds like preposterous, right? Like some plant leaf and some gel from plant leaf, like some miracle cure. Everyone's been on like the superfood thing. You know, you got to drink a lot of this, you got to buy this, and you got to do this. And a lot of people are kind of just like, well, really, you know, another one?
Yeah, in part of our story, the Aloe story that we wrote, was myself meeting Janice Jones, who was part of that original interview, who had known Rodney 20 years before Aloe. And she had a very serious case of lung cancer. And she connected with Rodney because she'd known him for 20 years. And he put her on the protocol. And she was very, very spiritual, very, very good person, good heart. And she just embraced the aloe along with her oncology. So she did go the route of oncology. And she lived 30 years beyond. But what was kind of amazing, my sister would take her to the oncologist, and the oncologist pull her aside and say, hey, there's 5 different types of lung cancer. The kind of lung cancer she had, nobody lives a year. Nobody. She's a walking miracle. And so was it her belief system? Was it her faith? Was it God's grace? Was it, and I would say all of those things play a role. Again, when I work with cancer patients, the challenge for me is to mitigate or control their fear, because they have a reason to be fearful, because they have this diagnosis and this prognosis. But it's like, if you don't mitigate or control that fear, that alone can sabotage your immune system.
Sure. You know, we're going to talk about the science and some of the benefit, but I want to bring into clarity something you just brought up, and that was her approach. Because really, there's 3 approaches you can take if you're fighting cancer. You can take an all-medical approach, you can take an all-natural approach, or you can take an integrated approach where you work them together. And I think, you know, the levels of integration can also vary too. Someone might say, okay, I'm going to do an integrative approach, and the medical doctors, they want to do surgery. I'll do the surgery, but they also want me to do chemotherapy, and I'm going to say no to that. Okay, so that's kind of a integrated approach still, but it's kind of a limited integrative approach.
Right. Can I make one comment on that?
Yeah.
So I was treating a cancer patient, and part of the protocol was the aloe vera gel. And his oncologist called me, and he said, hey, well, tell me about this aloe vera gel. And I said, well, why is an oncologist calling me about the aloe vera gel? And he says, because this patient is handling his chemo better than ever I've seen a patient handle chemo. And I want to get this stuff so people can get more chemo. I'm like, okay, that's kind of a different philosophy. But, you know, there was an aspect of the aloe actually mitigating certain of the ill effects of the oncology process.
More chemo.
It was the same thing with radiation too, because, they're putting the aloe cream on them and their skin can tolerate a lot more radiation. This is great. Well, is it? I don't know. I don't know if more radiation is better, because how do you stop it from killing the tissues around it? So with that integrative approach, well, I'll say of the three approaches, I would say 100% medicine is not an option.
No, I think that people are finding that out every day. That system's not working.
And I'd like to point out that if it's a debate, there's at least three different sides to this debate, and there's probably more if we
Well, there's subtle
look at it. But
But I'm going to win this debate.
Not a binary debate like everything is presented to us. There's actually nuances here. It's nice.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you take the medical approach is you got cancer, you're a victim. I'm going to, kill the cancer, and then you're fine. It doesn't account for the why did you get cancer. It just makes it sound like, oh, well, cancer's just out there and it picked you.
bad luck.
Maybe it's genetics.
Yeah.
That could play a role. Lifestyle could play a role. All kinds of things will play a role in that.
I noticed when they don't know the why, maybe it's genetics. And I'm like, no, nobody in my family ever had anything like this. They never go like, maybe it's environmental. They go straight to genetics because it's like, oh, look, we can do,
But even if it's genetics, we now know that we can influence that.
Yeah, epigenetics.
Yeah.
The genes are kind of like switches that are influenced by the environment, your thoughts, and you can even argue your karma, and that they can flip on and off. You know what I mean? So there's...
Right. And explain that, please. They can flip on and off based on what?
Usually it's environmental factors, but I would argue it's also your thought patterns. Your spiritual, religious belief systems can flip switches.
I would say it's nutrients, the information about the environment in the form of nutrients.
Well, okay. What if we grouped all those together and said, okay, all of them change your chemistry?
Yes.
Meaning the things you eat change your internal chemistry, but so do your thoughts. So really, you can actually change your nutrition or your blood chemistry. You can think, and happy, thoughts and laughter create certain chemicals in your body, and anger creates certain chemicals that perpetuates more anger
and fear.
But it tells your body about the environment. If you're in fear all the time, then your environment is dangerous, and you have to amp up your ability to fight, flight, or freeze or whatever, right? So, but it's all information coming into the body, whether it's through your senses, and taste is one of the senses. So all of this, everything is information coming in.
Yeah,
that's how you react to
it. When I talk to cancer patients or work with cancer patients, there's a couple books I really like. One is Kelly Turner. She was like, she was doing her PhD at Berkeley a long time back, and she was trying to say what were the common factors for cancer survivors, people who would come to the cancer project center and they survived. And so she writes a book called Radical Remission, which I really advise to anybody to read that book, whether you have cancer or you don't have cancer. But and then about 10 years later, she writes Radical Hope. And the difference between Radical Hope and Radical Remission was she added exercise. But in Radical Remission, she says, what are the 9 major factors that cancer survivors have? And when you read the book, part of it was like you change your nutrition, you change your pattern, you become self-empowered. That whenever I have a patient doing chemo, I said, remember, you drive the bus. Doctor doesn't know how you feel until you tell them. And so the new version of oncology is they're using less toxic, poison, so to speak. And that I think you can navigate that successfully if you're just honest with yourself and how you're feeling. And there's going to be times you just want to skip a session. And the people that I know that have survived cancer and done that had a certain amount of control over that process. And the new oncologists are kind of tapping into that, and they're giving them more flexibility. Like, you have to do this right away, and you have to do it every week, and you can't miss it. And now it's more, okay, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so you stretch it out, you kind of tune into how you're feeling, you give yourself recovery time and to, assimilate or eliminate the toxic aspect. And those people are the ones I think do the best.
You ever notice how the clinic where they do the IV chemotherapy is in the same building as the oncologist who prescribes the chemotherapy in their clinic? It's just
I've never noticed because I've never been.
Well, my father I dropped my father off at the clinic. It's like you're an oncologist, has his office in the same building as the clinic, don't you think that there's some financial relationship?
Well, now you're
I mean, it's just like, I mean, he taught me to be suspicious and skeptical.
I know with this subject, you can only attack the sacred cow so much. They're going to let you get away with so much, and it's a very short leash.
But is it a tasty cow?
Yeah.
Does it taste good? That's what and is it grass-fed?
Yeah.
Yeah, work hours are 9 to 5, happy hours from 5 to 7. So,
yeah.
They probably go from their work to the happy hour. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
There is a part when I work with cancer patients about empowering them that the buck stops with you. No matter what the doctor's telling you, what your friends or family are telling you, or what you're receiving in terms of spiritual guidance, or what I tell you, it's like ultimately it's your decision. You have to make that decision. And then what I say is just believe it. I said, embrace it. Don't second guess yourself from what you did a while back. Head forward and say, this is what I've chosen to do, and I'm going to trust that intuition and that process and that intellect of the studying you've done maybe to set that course. And
right.
then,
You make your decision and you go on the path.
yeah, and you don't
Try it.
because regrets, guilt, and shame, this all sabotaging the process. So if you're looking at the process and you're trying to evaluate it while you're doing it, it's like, you can make little micro adjustments, but from my background, it's like you pray, you meditate, you do your research, and then you make a decision, and then you go forward at the same time, assessing how you feel on a daily basis. And hopefully, I would tell patients, most people with aging are going like this. They're going downhill. That's just part we call the aging process. And then it's really huge when you go like this and you have a plateau. You actually don't feel worse, or you don't feel like you're getting older. And then when it gets really exciting is when you start going up and you start feeling better and you start feeling younger. And then you're just like, well, now I'm onto something. Something shifted in that process. And many people who have survived cancer actually say cancer was one of the greatest blessings of my life because it forced me to wake up and assess and reassess the things that were priorities and such.
I would say that
Most people that hear what you just said are going to think you're crazy, but there are those that experience that and they came out on the other side with a whole new level of understanding.
I would say that decision point you're talking about. I made the analogy the other day to just driving around, and you need to make a turn, right? And then you look around and you say, okay, I don't think there's anyone coming. And then it becomes a leap of faith. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to go for it, right? I made my best determination that the coast is clear. Then you put the accelerator down, you just commit to going. But you can't start going around your turn and then stop around and what? And so I realized a while ago that you're making that kind of commitment just driving on a daily basis. If you're
what I'm torn between though is the faith, the part that has the magic sauce, the secret sauce, is that the faith, or do you have the faith because you're on the right path and you just know it? You know what I mean? We have this knowledge in us. Somehow I've been breathing this whole time, and every now and then I swallow and blink and stuff, and I haven't thought about any of that. It just happens based on the life that is in me. That is a source of knowledge way smarter than my cognitive thinking that's going on.
Is it?
I had things to eat today and I chewed them and I swallowed it, and some of that's going to be turned into new living tissue replacing the old. That happens without me thinking. And does that source of knowledge give us knowledge, and all we have to do is listen to it, so that when we are listening to it, we're making the right decisions? And that's why we have faith. And that's because we're making the right decisions, because we're listening to that. I don't know. Is it, can I choose to believe?
You enjoying the show thus far? One of the many health secrets that we have covered on the show is all around aloe vera, specifically drinking raw aloe vera. Our aloe vera has helped our customers effectively heal their gut, increase their intestine health, lower inflammation in the body, eliminate and/or decrease acid reflux, have glowing skin and hair, and so much more. Now, as a frequent member of our audience, you will be exposed to exclusive specials and coupon codes for the awesome products manufactured by Haley Nutrition. That's right, for simply being awesome and tuning in. You can get a mini discount to help you optimize and better your health. To see how we can help and support you on your health journey, tune into the episodes and listen for coupon codes that you can use at www.haleynutrition.com before you make your orders of raw aloe vera. Once again, it's www.haleynutrition.com. Now, back to the show.
I think there has to be a differentiation between faith and belief. If you look scripturally in Hebrews, it says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so there's an aspect of faith that actually transcends belief, right? That if you're connected to a source, and it's like you don't necessarily have to have a certain degree of intellect or belief system, you're trusting a higher power and such. And so when I tend to differentiate between the physical aspect, the mental emotional aspect, and the spiritual karmic aspect. And not that it's important because you can't really separate those aspects, but what you want to do is get as many things on board as you can. You want to do the things physically that you know are good for you. You want to do the things that are mentally, emotionally, good for you. And part of that is fear mitigation and removal. And part of that is like, how do you increase your faith in that process? And the fire is where we know where faith is generated, because the difference, one of my spiritual teachers said, what's the difference between trust in God and faith in God? And I thought, same thing. You trust God, you have faith in God. And he goes, no, go think about it. I said, okay. So I go think about it, come back the next day. I said, all right, trust in God comes from the mind and the intellect. He said, okay, this is my experience. This is what I've studied. This is what I've learned. This is what the master said. I said, faith in God transcends knowledge. That is actually this divine flow that's beyond comprehension. And so when you can align those things and understand it, and he said, faith and trust look the same, like a feather that's lying on the ground until the wind blows. And when the wind blows, it's blown away versus a rock that's unmoved. And so he said that was the difference between faith and trust, is that trust can vary based on experiences, where faith says, no, this is what it is. I don't care what the evidence says.
Well, and I would also take a step back and say that, okay, maybe we can tie it in together. But what we started talking about is your autonomic nervous system and your intuitions coming from your body, bubbling up from your body to your mind. And that's intuition about what your body is telling you, which is something we have to relearn. I mean, we had it, we lost it. Why did we lose it? Because we had external stimulus creating external structures in our mind that we trusted and we had faith in, and it overrides our intrinsic intuition about our bodies. And for me, I had to deconstruct a lot of those learned faiths and beliefs, and tap into intuitive knowledge. And so it's a lifelong process. But you just do one thing, like you have to eat 3 meals a day, or you're going to pass out and die. Or you got to eat you got to eat carbs constantly. Just all these things, and it's like, and then we realize, like, wow, I can actually go without food and I actually feel fine. And you learn something new about your body. And now you could eat with intention, and with on an intuitive basis. And you say, not what does the TV tell me to eat today, or what am I craving? But, of these healthy options, do I feel like I need some salt? Do I feel some protein? And you ask your body, and your body tells you what to do. So anyway, but I would say that's separate from the idea of, some guru told me that I need to eat this way and I'll be happy, Yeah,
can I say my Buddha quote that my father taught me?
Hey. Let's have it.
Okay, so my father's teaching me this Buddha quote, and it kind of like changed my life when I heard it. And what he said was, do not believe in a saying merely because it is said, nor in writings by saints and sages merely because saints and sages wrote them, nor in doctrines handed down from antiquity, nor in the mere authority, and here I'm going to paraphrase, on your own teachers, masters, gurus, guides, experts, and leaders. But we are to believe in such sayings, writings, and or doctrines when they resonate with our reason and consciousness. And I think what the Buddha was saying was that we have this inner knowing. If we can just get calm and centered and kind of return to that almost, childlike, you must become like children to enter the kingdom of heaven, that there was a childlike understanding and wisdom that we have that we've kind of short-circuited when we over-intellectualize or we start getting into fear patterns or something like that. And so each person's path is quite unique. There's some similarities, but each person has their own unique journey. And part of that is that they have a wisdom of what's best for them if you just get into that calm, centered state to receive that kind of guidance and that kind of knowledge.
It makes sense. Here's another saying, and let's get your take on this.
Okay.
As it relates to getting well and faith.
Okay.
James 2:18, but someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without works, and I will show you my faith by my works.
Very good. There's an aspect of when I hear that particular scripture of taking active steps in your process that you have to do. Some people can pray themselves to health, and they do it. And other people can act their way in terms of good karma and doing good works for other people. When they did a longevity study, they were kind of shocked with the results. They wanted to do this extensive longevity study of what factors help you live a long life, right? And they found out that 2 factors kind of blew everything else away. The first was sense of purpose in life. And the second was happiness with daily life. And you didn't have to have both. You could have the sense of purpose and be quite miserable. Say, this is what I'm doing. Or you could have this happiness with daily life where you didn't have much of a sense of purpose. You're like, just enjoying the journey. Everything's going well. And so what we tap into is this idea that we have to take active steps, however we feel guided to do that. And that's the works part. And then at the same time, we have to have a belief system that if those works don't meet or don't create the desired result, you have to have this guidance or this compass that says, this is the direction I believe and I'm heading in.
I think it's just actions over words, which is, I think it actually seems like something that I was told is like a sort of a core belief in Jewish culture is you can think things, you can say things, but what really counts is what you do for your community, what you do for your family. And that's what you're actually measured on. That's what that phrase says to me, that it's to sort of take down a peg the people who are beautiful talkers.
Wait, are you Jewish?
Nope, not me. Nope.
I think of a customer actually just a few weeks ago that was purchasing aloe for someone else, and they were going to do all of these different juices, and this person had a certain cancer and was given a limited time to live. And when they ordered the aloe, it was, he's going to do it. He doesn't care what it tastes like. And before it arrived, I got a message from the same person saying that he wants to die. And it was almost like his faith changed type thing.
That after he
didn't have anything to drink. He didn't drink aloe. He didn't drink the juices that he was supposed to drink.
That was the deal breaker.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, so, if he wanted to live, when they said he doesn't want to live, I said, well, I'll pray that he changes his mind and decides to live, and wants to live, because that would produce hopefully some works of faith or works towards wanting to live, evidence that you wanted to live, consuming things that are good and could potentially be healing. Now, at that point, there's a good chance that he was too far along and that things weren't going to change anyway. Who knows? Is it that you gave up because you had no faith, because you just already had that internal knowing you were done? I don't know.
Well, part of the thing is our thing with death. What is death and what does it mean, and such as that. And so we have those with a religious, spiritual background. Many of us think that we're going to a better place, right? So part of the thing is that if you're tired of fighting and you don't think it's going to get better and you think it's only going to get worse, that's kind of like the lines of Kevorkian when you have a terminal diagnosis and stuff like that, and you say, yeah. But for those believers, you always know that at the 11th hour, things can turn around. And it happens all the time where somebody looks like they're at death's door, or some people cross death's door and they come back and they talk about that, crossing that door. And so each person, you have to honor and respect. If they're ready for death, I've had that situation with certain patients. I said, well, okay, then I'm going to pray and work on a graceful transition, and
Right.
and so that's, that my work shifts depending on the individual and what they want.
Wasn't that one of your first stories? One of your favorite stories.
Yeah, I had a bunch of those stories.
of
Yeah, I think of another scripture though that says something about it gives us hope in that he might return before that time happens anyway,
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off. There's a
No, it's an open spot.
lot of good.
There's a couple of things I wanted to say that I want to make sure I get into today. That the number one reason that people go to doctors, okay, is low energy. They're tired all the time. They can't get up there. You can't find their rest. There can be many reasons.
That's also the number one reason people don't go to doctors, because they don't have the energy.
You can make it horse money.
But that's because they have a nutritional deficiency, and I have evidence of that, which I can tell you a story about.
That gets delivered to their door.
And so, to me, the first compass is always energy. Like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is you can't get out of bed, and 10 is the best energy you've ever known, which one of my teachers said, you always make that a 9, because your 10 might be a 6 of what your potential is. So you're tapping out when you say this is the best it's ever been, and it could be. So you always break it down to 9, and you say you have this opportunity.
There is no 10.
There is no 10.
And there's also no 1.
There's no, all right. Right. So what happens is you can kind of assess yourself on a daily basis as where am I at in that energy continuum. If I'm 5 or above, I'm feeling pretty good. If I'm 4 or below, then I'm saying something has to shift or change. And then the number 2 reason people go to doctors is pain. And I developed a acronym for pain: pay attention intentionally now. I said, the alarm system's going off. Your body's trying to tell you what the situation, the severity of the situation, but we've kind of given inflammation this bad term or bad word that's the precursor for all of these. But inflammation is your immune system trying to address a particular situation. And so you want to balance it. Too much inflammation, not good. Not enough inflammation, not good.
So inflammation is information.
Inflammation, it is information. That's a good one. You're going to have to say
The t-shirt.
T-shirt. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to say that, in this particular journey, there are always clues to where we're going and where we're at, and actually where we've been. And most of us are not really tuned into that. We're not really kind of taking an assessment. Well, we'll drink a cup of coffee in the morning. We'll take something kind of stimulant in the afternoon, and we'll know, and we kind of accept it. Well, I'm this many years old, so therefore this is as good as it gets. And there's a few of us that say, no, that's not. That's just a glimpse of time, and it's an energetic pattern that can be changed.
Yeah, anyone that hasn't been doing all they can could certainly do more and be better, healthier tomorrow. And they can rinse and repeat and actually reverse the aging process to some extent.
I agree. Yep.
All right, let's go back to those 3 methods, because I don't think we completely unpacked them.
Okay.
Of dealing with something like cancer. The integrative approach seems to get some pretty darn good results. The reason I said that an only medicine approach is not good is because it really means that you had nothing to do with why you got your cancer. And if you had nothing to do with it, if you're merely a victim, that means that you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You can't. It's cancer, it gets you, and it got you. The integrative approach is saying, okay, I can do something about it. I do have something to do with why I had it. Even if it's my genetics, I have the ability to influence my genetics. I can certainly eat better and exercise better and have better thoughts and get better rest and do those things that'll make my body work more like it's supposed to, so that I can actually assist what the doctors are doing. That to me makes a lot more sense than just saying, doc, hook me up, pump me up, do what you have to do, and I'll just hope for the best and keep on living the way I am. That doesn't make sense. Why would anyone want to do that? Now, there's also the all-natural approach. Many have taken it. Many have had great success. How do you know if you should do all natural or integrative? That's the question.
Yeah.
That, I believe, the information is there. You got to pray about it and figure it out. And, if I said, you should do all natural and something is in you saying, I don't know, I really think I should go to the doctor. Well, then you should probably do an integrative approach because you feel that that's what you should do. So you probably should. And once you make your decision, own it.
Yeah.
It could change. Your decision could change, but
do you believe in killing things in your body, or do you only want to build and detox? So you get into sort of a real philosophy, which becomes a belief system. And I'm like kind of struggling between these, two worlds. But I'm kind of moving in that direction of, everything is nutrition and detoxification. And it's such a simple Occam's razor kind of approach to things that I really like it. I'm attracted to it because it's so simple. And there are definitely some things that medical science can do, like, fix a cataract that nobody else would know how to do, and replace my lens with an artificial lens so I can now read without glasses for the first time in my entire adult life, right? So,
wow.
I'm grateful for that. And it's working for me now. However, if I could rewind the clock and have faith in the body's own healing mechanism, go way back, and then not get toxified by whatever toxified me in the first place, and, had better practices as a child and not been around, cordless phones or whatever. I don't know. So, there's this whole chain of events. If I go back in time, I could maybe go the natural approach. But by this point in my life, I'm in a situation where I need that intervention. But I think that, we can move towards a more natural approach. But so I think that's why it is individual, because you have to believe in the treatment. You have to make that decision. For me, it was I explored some natural, some different approaches, and it didn't feel like it was going to work for me. And then I just okay, I need to be able to see, I have stuff I need to do. Right.
Right.
So I just said, okay, I trust you, doctor. Go, let's do that.
At the same time, I may as well support what I have left with good nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I never stopped that approach, that holistic, approach.
Yeah. Yeah. That it makes sense. And there's places where medicine really shines. And wow, if you're blind and medicine can make you see, why wouldn't you? And in the same case with cancer, why wouldn't you? If you have a giant tumor that's just sucking the life out of you, and medicine can easily take it out, and then you can continue on with natural, why wouldn't you?
Right, somehow you got too far down the path, and your body is not going to be able to handle that level of detox on its own. That happens if I don't know. We don't know exactly the triggers sometimes, but you can definitely get into a problem where your body just can't handle it. And that's where Western medicine comes in, I think.
Now, there are things you can do to where you would need less medicine. I talked a little bit about science with aloe. There was actually a research study done with aloe where there were 240 stage 4 cancer people with cancer in stage 4. Did I tell you this story, John? Okay. Or this study. They gave 119 of them 1 ounce of aloe a day. All 240 in the study got chemotherapy. And then they put them into groups, much like you would have stage 1, 2, 3, or 4 cancer. They put them in 4 groups from, little to no benefit to a mild benefit to a moderate benefit to the best category would be the complete result. And in this study, they only 1 ounce of aloe. I look at that and say, oh, what if you gave them 10 ounces? Because I do think more is better for scientific reasons. And there's reasons of certain nutrients and what they do in the body when it comes to the aloe and the immune system. I'm not talking about the Mocebo. effect. I'm talking about real scientific reasons here. But the group that did not get the aloe, that only got the chemotherapy, had 3 people in the complete result group. And this was a larger group by 2 people. The group that got 1 ounce of aloe and their chemotherapy had 10 people in the complete result group, 10 to 3. That's a big difference. That is statistically significant. And I think it would have been a lot more if they had more than 1 ounce per day.
I want to make a comment on Mocebo. So there are many times that more is better, right? That there's a certain amount that, but what I guess what I was making reference to is what I call the Mocebo trap, where you think more is better indefinitely, and all of a sudden you fall off an edge and you find out. So I made this joke, and I know I've told you on a couple different occasions. I said, if I die prematurely, I'm going to have my wife write on my epitaph, if only he drank a little more aloe vera. There's a part of me that's a minimalist that says, okay, I want to see what you can get away with and what's the optimal amount. And part of this is bang for the buck and such. But at the same time, if I had a particular diagnosis and the financial means, I would say I would encourage somebody to drink more, and especially if they felt the effects from it. So I say you do it for a week and you see how you feel. But it's going to lead you to the Mocebo trap, because ultimately you're going to want to do what Jonathan did, but the Gandhi test and drink pure aloe for a couple of days. And I'm like, okay,
no, I didn't do that. No, but I did start fasting on aloe. I just drank.
Oh, that's right.
Wanted in the morning, and I wanted to see if it took care of my appetite, right? If like I could. But the problem was it wasn't defrosting fast enough for me to drink. It kind of was slow. And then at one point in the mid-afternoon, a whole bunch defrosted. So
yeah, we throw ours in the swimming pool and it defrosts in about an hour.
Yeah. In the swimming pool, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we just throw the bottle in there.
Yeah.
But I think it was a little too much for me. I don't know. It was an interesting experiment, but I started getting hungry because I didn't have enough aloe to drink, I think. But I'm not sure that's the right solution for me. But
yeah, it's not going to take care of your hunger pain. But those pains, those toxic pains that people have when they're not consuming, and it just doesn't feel right. It's not a hunger pain. It's a toxic pain.
Yeah,
it does seem to have a quenching of that kind of discomfort.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't the hunger pain. It was like those Hawaiian macadamia nuts that I roast and salt myself were just calling out to me like,
it's different. They're really good. So I've shared a story. So I have this friend of mine who comes over in the early days of the aloe vera gel, and he says, I'm hungry. And I'm like, when was the last time you ate? And he said, this morning. And I said, what'd you eat? He said, I ate a big greasy hamburger. I'm like, there's just no way you're hungry.
Right.
You're in a toxic crisis in your stomach because you ate a big greasy hamburger. I said, right. Here. I gave him I think it was probably about 3 ounces of aloe. I said, drink this down. He goes, what is it? I goes, aloe vera gel. So he drinks it down and he goes, I'm not hungry anymore. Because what it did was it put out what was going on in his stomach, and it reduced the whatever. But he said, this filled me up. But I said, no, it stopped whatever was going on in your stomach.
Well, it's the bitter
that you called hunger.
It's a bitter flavor, which Ayurvedically would balance.
Yeah.
Fire, which is acid.
Right.
So there's that. You get into all sorts of different theories of how it's working.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying this podcast. As a thank you for tuning in, this month use the coupon code BLESSING. That's BLESSING. For 10% off your entire purchase at HaleyNutrition.com now through the end of January 2025. You can use the coupon to save on top of the already discounted bundled prices. As an example, if you were picking up 3 canisters of Haley Pro vegan protein powder, 3 canisters is already discounted by 20% off the single can price. You can use the coupon for an additional 10% off the already discounted price. And if you were getting a case of 12, it's already discounted 30% per canister. take an additional 10% off with this coupon code now through the end of January 2025. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. So, John, you were saying that it's going to say on your tumor if only he drank a little more aloe, because you're like the frugal type, I guess. I'm guessing, right? Like, and I am too, because I'm the guy that, like, you know, when the toothpaste is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get any more out.
Yeah.
I can still get enough out to brush my teeth probably 5 or 6 more times.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a personal victory. Like, you know, you just think you're empty.
Well,
You just got to fold it right and stick your finger up in there, and you can do it again and again and again.
Yeah, but there comes a point where I say it's not worth the effort.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's not worth it.
You don't cut the tube open and then scrape it with the brush, huh? Okay. That's too much.
Make that draw the line.
But along the same lines, there was a part where I wanted to find out what was the optimal amount for me to drink personally for my patient's experience and for their socioeconomic status and for their journey. For some people, they love the taste of aloe and they drank aloe, you know, copiously, and they had the money and the means to do it. Other people, it was a financial difficulty. Anything they did was a financial difficulty. And so I would always say, when I'm always looking for, like, what is the minimal to get the maximum benefit, and fully realizing that my minimal might be too little, right? Like the
near maximum benefit.
Yeah, the near maximum.
Before you get into the significant diminishing point, diminishing returns.
So it's like, when you take it and taking it on an empty stomach, and doing it consciously with intention, those kind of things. If you only have a little bit and you're waiting for it to frost, like how do you get the most benefit out of the what's left in your jar while the big one's defrosting, right?
Well, and the other part is the fiber that comes in the and for each person that's a different thing. You and I personally believe it's the best part. That's the fuel for the bacteria. It's the prebiotics and such, and that's kind of my personal belief system. But then I realized some people that was the part that, no, this I can't do. I'm going to put it through a strainer. I'm going to do that.
The texture.
Yeah, it's a texture issue. It's a, whatever. So part of me was kind of like adapting the methodology to be user friendly. So for instance, if somebody found it intolerable, I'd say put a little bit of maple syrup in there, or put a little bit of pineapple juice in there. And because you don't want to gag it. And because if you're gagging something, one of two things, that you're going to either adjust your taste buds, or you're going to say, no, I'm not going to do this.
Like you said, it creates a negative association, which is the last thing you want for something healing.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me want to look something up right now. So let me hit Google up for aloe, honey, and vodka.
These.
Let's see what we got here. Honey and aloe vera, the magic potion.
Honey.
And then it talks about alcohol, adding alcohol. But it's a recipe made by someone that swore it cured cancer.
Mm-hmm.
The vodka?
Well, the three together. I think it's, the spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down concept. I don't know if there's any benefit to adding honey. Honey is a biblical food. I'm sure there's some great benefits, for it. It wouldn't be talked about so much.
Yep.
I can't justify vodka in my aloe vera.
Here's the thing. What's interesting about that, in every indigenous culture, they had a different way to eat raw eggs. So we know it's part of the issue. What do I get? And most of those cultures would put some kind of alcohol with the raw eggs, because that would mitigate any kind of bad bacteria.
Oh, okay.
Eggnog, like the old school eggnog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So eggnog, you take a raw egg and you have the situation way that what could happen with raw eggs? Well, in this country, you could be very problematic.
And you ferment it for 4 days.
Yeah.
I've done this, and it's like it's transformed. It's a whole different thing. And once you ferment it with the alcohol, it actually lasts for 2 weeks. So like have some raw milk and some raw eggs and don't put alcohol in it. Do you think it's going to taste good in 2 weeks? No, but it tastes
No, it's going to get contaminated with something else because there weren't the good stuff to keep it out. So yeah.
But, I mean, it all makes sense when you think about it. So, like the recipe.
Interesting.
And also, my other theory was that in the depths of winter, in a northern climate, and you're like the holiday or like December, January, you don't really want to go out and milk the cow because it's really cold. I mean, you have to, but I mean, I was just thinking theoretically, that might be a day where you want to skip, going out and milking the cow.
But what they do historically, if they had to, they'd probably, get a little cup full of the fermenting cod liver oil that's in the barrel outside the front door. I mean, that was a real thing.
So maybe you're eating the cows and you're eating the chickens, but you've got the eggnog that lasts you 2 weeks, so that you don't have to go out and get fresh milk every day.
And part of the challenge is good bacteria versus bad bacteria.
Right.
So we talk about dysbiosis as a disproportionate amount of bad bacteria to good bacteria, but we know that our immune system is really driven by our bacterial content. We talked about that this last week, but there's an aspect of germ theory that we have to respect, and that's like, for instance, when you're milking a cow, they usually take iodine and they dip the udders before they milk the cow. And so they're doing some kind of disinfectant to neutralize potential, toxic or pathogenic.
I wasn't aware of that. And I'm having a hard time buying the importance of it because historically, moms don't clean their nipples anywhere.
You're right. I mean, there's an aspect, you're right. So, but it fits down theory, but that's somewhat resolved in the process of milk, and it becomes more prevalent if you're drinking raw milk, right? So then you have a different purification process, and there's different belief systems on raw milk. Most of the world drinks goat's milk versus cow's milk, and so there was a study that said it was much more digestible. But in this country, we kind of raised in such a way that cow's milk is it, and goat's milk tastes funny, right? So in my studies, in my experience, if you talk about calcium versus magnesium, all milk or dairy has 10 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. And we're taught that that's kind of like the ultimate fuel of milk. And what it is, it's the ultimate fuel that if you're an infant, you're trying to grow and you're developing muscles and bones, that is the proper ratio that you want to build a lot of.
I would say if you're a baby cow, you have to grow really big giant femurs to support your giant weight.
Yeah.
You need a lot of calcium.
But the point that I'm making is most people get lactose intolerance not when they're young. They get it when they stop growing. And when they stop growing and they've grown out their gut, then all of a sudden their gut has a different way to address what's coming in with the dairy products. And so then it becomes this balance aspect of how much do I have or how much do I need and what's optimal. And your body's always telling you what's optimal. Like if you eat something and an hour later you don't feel better, something's wrong with what you ate.
Yeah. So I have this experience where, especially with dairy, like every once in a while I just get this like, I'd really like some raw milk or something or some kefir or something. So I go out and I get some and I'm drinking it and it's like, oh, it's like the most amazing experience. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And so I keep drinking it. And then
Mocebo.
Because it like tastes so good. And then also because I spent a lot of money and I want to get the most out of the whole bottle. But then there comes a time like about 3 days later when it's just, I'm just not feeling as good. I get a little bloated and sinuses and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I've hit the wall. Got to cut back or like reduce the dosage. And so, but I experienced that. But then like a few months later, I'll have some and it's just like, oh my God, my body's like, this is the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah. Milk's an interesting thing too, because there's different kinds of cows. And like you said, there's goats. What are you feeding them? I forget which are the preferred ones.
Jersey milk is supposed to be really good.
I have a personal experience. I was an athlete in high school and I was suffering from seasonal allergies in Phoenix, Arizona. And my father, who was a physician, had a bunch of physician friends. And there was this guy who was cutting edge. His name was Dr. Burr. And he was like the cutting edge of allergy medicine, before even people knew about allergy medicine. So he makes this appointment for me. And I walk in and I'm bucked in. I got my muscles and I'm like, football player. And this guy was a small Jewish guy,
Oh, I'll play the role.
so it literally could blow him over with a strong wind, and he sits there and we're talking in the session, and he says, "What kind of food do you eat today?" I said, well, at the time I was drinking predominantly milk. I would go in there and I would take a half gallon and I would suck it down in one sitting, and that was my meal for the day. And so he's sitting there and he says to me, how much gas do you have? And I said, well, flatulence. I said, well, I've never really thought about it. It's like, he's asking me these funny questions. And he says, and so finally after the analysis, he says, you have to give up dairy. And I said, and at the time, dairy was like 80% of my diet. And I'm looking at him and I said, well, I said, Doc, I don't want to be disrespectful, but if I end up giving up dairy, do I end up looking like you? And he laughed. He said, oh, no, you big, strong boy. You'll be fine. Just kind of. And so I gave up dairy. Boom. Within a week and a half, allergies were gone. And I had to look at things a lot differently. Now, it could have been the amount of dairy because I was drinking dairy by the carton.
Mocebo effect.
Mocebo, because I liked it. It tastes good. And it was like easy to take.
Well, it's got sugar in it. Right? It's like, it's loaded with, sugar. And
I think we have breast memories. The last time I was drinking this, it was really good. I want to get back to the source.
Your mother. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about your mother.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but
when were you weaned? What age were you weaned?
So there's a part where, again, we tend to go black and white, like Jonathan was talking about earlier, and it's like these degrees. It's like, well, wait a minute. Whenever somebody wants to wean off medications, I'm always one of those people say you have to be really gentle with yourself, and you don't just go cold turkey. And some people do that and they find it better successful. But to me, it's like the body can adjust if you just give it a chance to adjust. And so if you want to get off a medication, under the guidance of your health practitioner or doctor. But
what if you're addicted to turkey? What if you're addicted to cold turkey? How do you quit that?
Cold turkey. But I remember, I'll tell you a funny story about the Avalon here in the Great Wellness Center where I was working there. I'm in there and this woman comes in, middle-aged, and I said, what are the issues you want to work on today? And she says, well, I have no issues. And I'm thinking, a woman in America, middle-aged, doesn't have any issues? I said,
why are you here?
I said, this is a miracle. She's a unicorn. I said, you're going to find out what she's doing, how she's doing. And then that spirit says to me, ask her how many medications she's on. And I said, well, excuse me, are you on any medication? And she says 9. I said, 9 medications for what? Anxiety, depression, insomnia, ADHD. And I said, well, wouldn't those be issues? And she says, no, the medication takes care of it. And I'm like, okay. I can see where you're coming from.
Was that like an adult version of a well child visit?
Yeah.
Like where you're like a well adult visit, like, I have no problems, but I'm here anyway for healthcare.
So, part of my thing is that I like to see people medication free and symptom free. And on that, and there's this, I'm sure there are times you can't go off your medication. And that was my personal experience with Janice when I tried to get her off medication. She looked at me like, you're taking me to the doomsday. And I'm like, no, if that's what you believe, stick with it, and it's working for you because you lived through cancer for 30 years, And so,
well, it's suppressing they may be suppressing the symptoms. So it doesn't bother you. So
yeah, we have to make some changes so we can decrease the dose.
Yeah.
And eventually not need it anymore.
Well,
use the medicine to buy some time while you're getting well.
Let me give an example. When I had my eye surgery, they don't put you under because they need you to follow instructions and look up stuff like that. So, but they give you a sedative so that you're aware and awake, but you don't care, right? So I'm like, whoa. So that's a medication that cures all your problems by making you not care about them.
Yeah.
I was like, that's some serious stuff. It took me several days to detox. I was kind of loopy.
Yeah.
But I also had gone off coffee. But actually, my way of getting off coffee is going to half cap. So I would have coffee a day. And then what did I do? I had one day of headaches and then I'm fine. So, and then I had my first coffee against it.
And I want to say something. I'm sure there are good things that Big Pharma has done, in society in the history of big pharma. When I would challenge them to do something good with your money, do something to make society better, where the top motive is not profit, and that you have some degree of legacy, that you did something to improve the circumstances of the thing. And so when we're talking now about the rebooting of the American healthcare system, which I think it needs rebooting. And we'll talk about this in the future, because we're about to write an article together on Raymond Francis. And he wrote a book back in 2014 called The Great American Healthcare Hoax. And the part that I didn't like was, well, what are the solutions? What are the solutions to the problems with the healthcare system? And I offer to you that there's going to be a rebooting this year, with possibly,
hopefully some booting. Hopefully we'll do some booting, and then over here maybe some reboot.
Yeah.
We need some of that. But what we need to do is, if we want a healthcare system, we have to make it about healthcare and not about sick care. Because now there is no such thing really as healthcare. There is, but not everyone's.
That's what I wanted to say about integrative. The thought I had when you were talking about integrative was, in my experience, Western medicine can fix like serious problems that need immediate solutions. But then when they're done with you, they just kind of like off with you, and you're like,
right.
But what do I do next? Or like, how do I prevent it from happening again? Or why did it happen? Or how do I get better or feel good and get back to normal or eat better than normal? How do I become well? And they're like, yeah, we don't know. Like, what should I eat?
Yeah.
Oh, what somebody think about nutrition? Go talk to one of these people. And so that's why, and then people then, go to something alternative and look for those answers, and then they're off on their own. They don't have any guidance, right? So they followed the protocol, they followed the path, and then they just like, over the cliff, and they're like, now where do I go? And that's where we need a system.
Absolutely.
To guide people to wellness.
The only good in medicine is using it to buy time while the changes that you're making to get well take effect. We're going to close with one thought here.
Okay.
Something for people to ponder on. This was said by B.J. Palmer, I believe. He said, if you took all the drugs known to mankind and threw them into the ocean, it would be good for mankind. Bad for the fish, but good for man.
Well, can I just add one? What are we done? Okay.
No, but what do you got?
Triad healing. How it evolved was that you have an inquiry. You find out what the patient is feeling, experience, believing. And then you have the edification, where you try to give them an education how to improve it. Part of that's aloe vera gel. And then you have the empowerment, that you say the buck stops and ends with you, that ultimately you're the one that determines the degree of your healing and the success of the sessions that were inspiring. And so I think that when we talked last week about your faith has made you whole, that was an aspect of Jesus empowering the person who received the miracle, that said, you helped make this happen. So
are you saying the effectiveness?
Yeah.
The effectiveness is your role.
Yeah.
Partially.
People connect with John and Jonathan at triadhealing.com. Everyone knows where to find me, HaleyNutrition.com, drhaley.com for the blog related to this podcast. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you again next week.
Sounds good.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed that episode today on the Dr. Haley Show. Make sure to hit subscribe on whichever platform you are listening to this. If this episode made you think of someone, go ahead, take a screenshot, and share this exact episode with them. You can catch the show notes for this episode on www.drhaley.com. If you want to geek out with Dr. Michael Haley on other radical health topics, be sure to check out his YouTube channel, where he posts exclusive video content. All the details are at www.drhaley.com, and we can't wait to hang out with you on the next episode.